Time now to talk to Mike Jones for the first time in 2025. NFL writer for The Athletic at by Mike Jones is where you find him on Twitter. Mike, Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm doing well. How you guys doing?
Yeah, Happy New Year, buddy.
We're doing well.
Got a playoff game to talk about.
Basking in the afterglow of a 12-win season, something that hasn't happened here since 1991. So that's pretty cool for Commanders fans and for the organization, too. It's been under a dark cloud, obviously, with Dan Snyder. Now with Josh Harris, they make the playoffs in the first year.
What did you think the top end potentially was? I mean, I know Cakes went on record, said 10. I said 9, I think. And we were kind of lambasted for being overly optimistic. And, rightfully so. Makes sense. But
I thought maybe like 8 wins, maybe 9. I mean, yes, they had, a promising young quarterback, but I felt like, okay, their offensive line is a work in progress. They don't have a real marquee pass rusher. Mm-hmm. Secondary needs work. And so I thought, hey, they could be competitive, but they weren't going to make as big a jump as, what would, be hoped for. But hey, I was definitely wrong. Did not see Jaden Daniels being as impactful as he has been and being able to carry this team in such clutch moments, and did not see just the constant growth. There was that one little lull in the middle of the season where they struggled a little bit, but this team really has largely continued to ascend, continue to get better in the weaker areas, throughout the season.
What do you think the ceiling is, having now one season under his belt? By the way, he started all 17 games. I think the biggest knock against Jaden was durability, and certainly he battled injury, but was able to start all 17 games. What is his ceiling as a quarterback in this league?
I mean, I think he can be an MVP candidate. Right. That's that type of quarterback. Look, as a rookie, to be able to take over games and carry your team to wins, that's pretty good indication of what he could be, because normally, you might be close and then as a young guy, there's an interception that kills like a drive at the, at the last minute as you're trying to march downfield. But he got the ball in his hands and, you're like, hey, can he do this again? And boom, the Hail Mary was fantastic, but you're like, okay, well, was there some luck involved there? Yeah. But then we saw him, multiple times, against Philly. And then the week after that, like, all right, okay, Atlanta, here we go. We got the ball back. And that's, what you see guys like Patrick Mahomes do. Keep the game close, get the ball in your guys' hands with, 2 minutes left, and he goes to work, carries you downfield, and you score. So he can be one of those elite quarterbacks that is able to make you a real contender.
Mike, there's been a lot of hand-wringing here in the D.C. market about the possibility of Kliff Kingsbury just being a one-and-done as the OC here for the Commanders after he led this team to scoring. I believe it was 28.9 or maybe around 29 points per game, top 5 in the league. What are you hearing in league circles as far as how selective he's going to be? Do you think he's going to be here for year 2? Because we know he's still getting paid by the Arizona Cardinals, so he's making probably like lower to mid-tier head coach money as a coordinator. He can afford to be selective. What are you hearing about Kingsbury's future?
Yeah, well, I think it all depends on what the opportunity is, how appealing it's going to be, what he's got to work with. If we know that he's going to interview with the Chicago Bears, is what it sounds like. That's an attractive job because you have a quarterback that he's got good familiarity with. They've got, pieces to work with at the wide receiver position, at running back. They've got a pretty decent defense. He said it. Look, he wants to be a head coach somewhere. He's happy where he is here. But, look, he wants another crack at being a head coach. And so I think the possibility is real. It just depends, though. Is Chicago, in love with him, or is the guys they interview and the other interview some other guys too and feel more strongly about someone else? We'll see. But I think, Yeah, unfortunately, there's a possibility that you could lose him after year one, but you just hope that does he take guys that were here with him, or no? If you're able to elevate maybe Brian Johnson, who's already been here and have worked with Jaden, and so you have some continuity, that'd be the best case scenario. And then you see where things go from there. You don't want Jaden to have to learn a whole new offense already, but sometimes that happens. And if you're a talented quarterback, and we saw Lamar Jackson have multiple offensive coordinators and continue to ascend, and so it's not the worst thing in the world. Obviously, they're just getting going here, so you hope that maybe you have Kliff for one more year. But I think that you got to be realistic and know that there's a chance that you could lose them.
Talking to Mike Jones, NFL writer for The Athletic. So let's get into the playoff matchups this weekend, and we'll start with Washington against Tampa. It's a rematch from week one. Week one is so long ago. How do you see this game playing out? Do you give Washington a good chance to pull off an upset on the road?
Yeah, I think it's going to depend on what the health of this secondary is going to be like. Are you going to have Lattimore back? Because, look, Mike Evans is a monster. It's just an automatic 1,000-yard machine. He's a big play receiver. But also, they have young guys like Jalen McMillan who have ascended at the wide receiver position that Baker Mayfield is very confident in. I was at that game this past weekend where, it's 4th and 8, and he's taking a 30-yard shot downfield to this rookie. And, they're, in the red zone, and he's going to him in the end zone when he sees that Mike Evans is double covered. He's not having to force things to Mike Evans because the only guy who can make plays. And they also have a strong run game. And so they are going to be a team that your defense is going to have to really execute in the trenches and in the secondary. If they can do that, then yeah, Washington has a chance. But I'm not worried offensively for Washington. I think that they can hang with the Bucs. Obviously, both of them, I think, are pretty similar as far as like what their scoring output was, 28, 29 points a game. Obviously, Washington didn't look great offensively to end the season during that first half. But there were a lot of teams that were headed to the playoffs that didn't look good. So I think they can bounce back there. But again, what is your health of your secondary going to be like? Are you going to have your top guys? Because you're going to need it against an offense that has been pretty explosive this season.
Mike, did the Lions give the blueprint on how to shut down the Vikings? Sam Darnold, I'm guessing this is his worst game of the season, 18 of 41, didn't even pass for 200 yards, no touchdowns, sacked twice in that game. And O'Connell was pretty stubborn about not tacking on field goals early in that game that could have kept them closer. The Lions pull away behind Gibbs's 4-touchdown performance. But should the Vikings be worried heading into this matchup with the Rams with what Darnold did on Sunday night?
Yeah, that was a little bit shaky. But, I felt like he looked like he was playing tight. Other guys on the team looked like they were playing tight. Almost, like you said, O'Connell, they knew that they were going against the Dan Campbell, who was very aggressive, going for it on 4th down. And so they started trying to play his game. Look, you've got to play your game. Do what got you there. But they also had the opportunity where Van Ginkel dropped what should have been an interception. We've seen him jump in front of screen passes and take it to the house. If that had happened, then the complexion of the game changes a lot. So, yes, the Lions won, but I felt like Minnesota hurt themselves more than anything. And so we'll see, can they bounce back there? Because, Sam Darnold has been on this amazing comeback quest, and the narrative about him has been changed. But if that was their playoff game and that was a one-and-done situation there, then, the narrative kind of comes back down to earth a little bit for him. But I think that probably was a good thing for them. They had a playoff game, his first type of playoff atmosphere before the playoffs even start. So they go back to the drawing board, learn from the mistakes they made, and then they can go on, we'll see what kind of a run they can go on. It's going to be tough against the Rams, but I think they have an opportunity to bounce back.
So let's get to the Saturday games, and I'm going to actually start with the night game. Steelers-Ravens. Steelers have lost 4 in a row. Played the Ravens just a few weeks ago. Ravens pretty much dominated that game. Do you see this game going any differently?
Well, the thing about the Steelers is their offense just doesn't look good. Their defense also, look, TJ Watt has been an impactful guy, and he did not really make much of an impact in that playoff game either. But the offense had been doing better. But then things just haven't, George Pickens was hurt. Now he's back, but he and Russell Wilson seem like they're out of sync. Russell Wilson executed one of the most poorly executed 2-minute drives for a veteran quarterback. Some of his decision-making was just really mind-bending for a guy who's been there. So it's very odd. I don't know. Mike Tomlin said, hey, these are lessons, whatever. Well, a lesson's maybe 1 game, 2 games, but now 4 games in a row. I think that they might struggle offensively to match the firepower that you have with the Ravens, who can basically do whatever they want, either running the ball with Lamar Jackson, with Derrick Henry, or passing the ball. And we'll see what happens with Zay Flowers. That could, diminish their firepower a little bit. But I pretty much see the Steelers being one and done in the playoffs here, because they just look. They had a good story middle of the season where they started off pretty decently with Justin Fields, and then Russell Wilson took things over and took them to another level. But it's like he hit the wall. They've got to get their quarterback situation figured out for the future. And I almost wonder, if we see a slow start from him, will we see Justin Fields? Because he can at least put pressure on you from a running perspective and a passing perspective. But we'll see.
Yeah, they were 10-3 at one point. So that's the game Saturday night. Let's go to the earlier game. Chargers get into the playoffs. They head to Houston, take on a Texans team that, 10-7, they win the division, but nobody really looks at them as any sort of a threat. Who do you like in that matchup?
Yeah, it wasn't the jump that we were hoping expecting we were going to see from Houston year 2 with C.J. Stroud and DeMeco Ryan. C.J. Stroud kind of had a little bit of a sophomore slump, and look, they've had injuries at their wide receiver position, so they have not been as effective as we'd hoped. But when you look at the Chargers, they're a physical team on both sides of the ball. They want to win in the trenches. They want to establish their will. I think that they have a chance to win this game because of the physicality, because of the balance that they execute with. They just seem like they're clicking on all of their cylinders, whereas Houston is still a little bit disjointed. So I'm going to go with Chargers.
Mike, let me ask you about a non-playoff team, specifically a quarterback here. The first 2 games of the season for Bryce Young, he looked like the worst quarterback that I'd seen play in the league like in a dozen years. He was just lost. That offense didn't know what they were doing. So he got a mental reset where he sat for a few games. Andy Dalton started, I want to say 3 or 4 games. And then they reinserted Bryce Young, which is the right move because you need to see if this is your guy. You spent the number 1 overall pick on him back in 2023. And for the last 5 or 6 weeks, he really rebounded to the point where now, I thought Carolina for sure was going to have to take another quarterback high in the draft. I would guess with Canales kind of turning him around there that they're just going to build around Bryce Young because he showed marked improvement, especially in the last 5 or 6 games of the season.
No, absolutely. And I kind of was critical, I was critical about the decision to bench him after 2 games. It's like, look, and you didn't play him in the preseason, so what kind of preparation were you giving him? Obviously, whatever it was that Canales is hoping to accomplish gave Young a wake-up call. I had talked to some people who said, from a preparation standpoint, he dug in some more and started carrying himself like more of a professional, and that really helped him as he, was able to bounce back. And yes, their question is answered. They do have their quarterback. We saw him continue to ascend. I think he had 1 game, I can't remember which team they were playing, where he came back down to earth and looked pretty bad. But then the week after that, he bounced back, finished the last 2 weeks on a strong note, gave them, a big win to knock Atlanta. Obviously Tampa won, but Atlanta was hoping to win that game and then get some help. But he, had a big performance there for Carolina to end the season. So, yeah, they've got their quarterback. They have a lot of things that they can build on. When you look at their roster, they still have a lot of holes, a lot of needs. And so the fact that they were able to string together some wins late in the season, get some really quality performances from Bryce Young, bodes well for them. They have, needs and money, resources to spend to upgrade that roster. So I think we should see them really be able to build on the second half of this season and take strides forward next year.
Mike, thanks as always. We love talking to you. We'll have you on again soon. It's Mike Jones, NFL writer for The Athletic. Thanks again.
Happy New Year, bud.
Thanks, guys. Happy New Year to you guys.
Yep,
Thanks.
he's at by Mike Jones on Twitter. Coming up later, Barry Verluga will join us. We'll talk Commanders and Bucs with him. And when we come back, we'll start discussing the matchup. We're going to break down what's going to be different against Tampa in the playoff game that they weren't able to do in week 1 when Tampa had a convincing win against the Commanders in the season opener. How will the defense adjust? We'll break down the matchup when we come back here on The Fan.